Activity seen from the ground here in Yuma being confirmed by the most recent Customs and Border Protection apprehension numbers, where they say they took over 160,000 migrants into custody across the southern border in the month of February alone. The new numbers showing a 6.5% increase in apprehensions from January 2022 and a 63% increase compared to the numbers from February 2021. Through 5 months of the current fiscal year, total apprehensions well over 800,000 and on pace to be over 2 million by year's end. In Yuma, the daily cycle of crossings, then transport by Border Patrol continues. Ulises, an asylum seeker from Cuba, says the journey to the U.S. was very dangerous.
Sometimes you're scared because you don't know the area and you can lose your life, and there's a lot of danger.
Also, according to the CBP numbers, over half of all migrants who were apprehended in February were expelled under Title 42. This means they were sent back to their home country or Mexico without a court date. Others will be allowed to stay in the U.S., but the current court system is so overwhelmed, it could take years until their claims are heard. Elian, another asylum seeker from Cuba, says she does not want her asylum claim to be rejected.
Truth be told, it would be really rough if they sent us back because we come seeking asylum.
I asked both migrants if they had heard of Title 42 or knew what it was.
No, título no.
Okay.
No sé el título.
Okay.
No.
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 Okay. Adam Klett, News 11.
You're working major breaking news today. Another massive migrant voyage reaching shore in the Florida Keys, not far from Key West. More than 100 Haitian migrants ending up in the backyard of a home on Summerland Key.
This dangerous voyage comes just 1 week after nearly 400 migrants were taken into custody in Key Largo.
Let's get right to Local 10's Christina Vasquez. She's live now in the Lower Keys with the late-breaking details. Christina.
And I can tell you, after digging through some federal data from the Coast Guard and from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, we really begin to see this increase this fiscal year. Starting for them is October 1st, 2021. But as a community, we are witnessing what appears to be an acceleration of those trends just over the past 2 weeks. These are people undertaking a very dangerous journey, as you are about to see. Sky 10 in Summerlin Key over what U.S. Customs and Border Protection said was a suspected smuggling operation. Approximately 140 Haitian migrants aboard a sailing vessel. This picture helps tell the story of what life may have been like on board. Blankets lining a portion of the deck and what federal agents described as an overloaded older vessel. This comes following an uptick in migrant apprehensions. Since March 1st, there have been 6 suspected maritime smuggling events in the Florida Keys involving migrants from Cuba and Haiti. 5 in just the past 8 days. The vast majority, they say, Haitian migrants. That includes this vessel with 356 Haitian migrants, which ran aground near Ocean Reef Club in Key Largo just over a week ago. U.S. Border Patrol Miami Sector Chief Patrol Agent Walter Slosar saying at the time, quote, "The criminal organizations that overload these vessels sacrifice the safety of the migrants for the sake of profits." As federal agents provided emergency medical service to the migrants located at Summerlin Key this morning, 4, they say, needed to be treated at an area hospital for dehydration. And the remaining, they say, will be transported to 2 Border Patrol stations in order to begin removal proceedings. Reporting live for you tonight outside the Border Patrol station in Marathon, Florida, I'm Christina Vasquez, Local 10 News.
More than 60 illegal immigrants found inside an 18-wheeler tanker trailer that led police on a chase in South Texas. That big rig hit several law enforcement vehicles during the pursuit, causing officers to open fire. A trooper was injured. He is expected to be okay. The migrants were turned over to Border Patrol. And a newly released report from ICE reveals arrests and deportations decreased significantly under President Joe Biden. In fact, take a look at this. 74,082 migrants were arrested in the U.S. during the 2021 fiscal year. That is down from 103,603 in 2020. Deportations also dropped to 59,011, the lowest number since 1995. I know we have 2021 there, but it's actually the lowest number since 1995. And Mark Morgan, the former acting commissioner of Customs and Border Protection and visiting fellow at FAIR, joining us right now to break down some of these numbers. Mark, good morning to you. I know you've been waiting a while for these numbers to be released. Clearly, not a surprise considering the crisis we've seen at the border. You saw the story that we just reported on there. What message does this send to migrants looking to cross the southern border?
Yeah, Jay, look, we've been waiting 5.5 months for this report. You and I personally talked about this a couple of times. And now, just as we've been saying, we see why they've been delaying this report to try to spend it as much as they could because the numbers are horrific. Look, it's important we put this in context. While we're experiencing the highest level of illegal immigrations in our lifetime and our borders are out of control, we've essentially handed the southwest border over to the cartels. What are we seeing? The lowest number of arrests, the lowest number of deportation, and the lowest number of illegal aliens being detained by ICE we've seen in over 20 years. Look, the message is clear. Now is the time to illegally enter our borders, break the sovereignty of our nation, because this report clearly shows and is sending a message. We're not going to help you break into our country and release you, but we're going to prevent you from being unlawfully deported. So my recommendation to Vice President Harris, if you really want to find those root causes, read this report.
And the ICE acting director reacted to this report, someone from the administration, saying, as the annual report's data reflects, ICE's officers and special agents focused on cases that delivered the greatest law enforcement impact in communities across the country while upholding our values as a nation. So, Mark, it's clear ICE under the Biden administration has changed drastically from the prior administration. How do you see this playing out in years to come?
Look, Jan, if this wasn't so serious, I'd just laugh at that statement. I mean, can you... I don't even know what that statement is saying. And look, I've never seen more spin and misdirection come from a career official than I have in that statement. And look, Mr. Johnson, he should be ashamed of himself. He knows better. Here's the reality. Here's how this played out in the last year. The overwhelming majority of those that ICE arrests in the interior are not only here illegally, but they also have an additional criminal conviction or a criminal pending charge. That's a fact. What we saw is that fewer historic lows are being arrested. So that means more criminals are out in our community. In addition to that, ICE agents were forced to release under this administration 16,000 illegal aliens that they had in custody that had criminal conviction and criminal charges. So what that means, in the 1.4 million that either were released in the United States or the 600,000 that evaded apprehension, at the end of the day, that just means there are more illegal aliens walking our communities that also have criminal convictions, criminal charges. That's going to continue to play out in the next 3 years.
And one policy the Biden administration moved to end is the deportation of minors under Title 42. Of course, no one could come in during the pandemic, hardly. We couldn't even allow travel from many countries during the pandemic. But a judge ruled that the Biden administration could no longer exempt teens and children from Title 42. Well, the CDC, get this, released a statement saying, quote, after considering current public health conditions and recent developments, expulsion of unaccompanied non-citizen children is not warranted to protect the public health and recognition of the unique vulnerabilities of unaccompanied non-citizen children. CDC is immediately terminating the CDC orders to the extent they apply to them. What's your thoughts on this, Mark? What do you make of the CDC's decision to terminate this policy for minors only?
Yeah, Tia, so keep in mind, what you said is very important. Look, they terminated this, did what I call political carve-out for the unaccompanied minors a year ago. And at the time of the pandemic was still at the highs, where this government was forcing mandates, forcing individuals to be vaccinated and mask mandates. If you want to keep your job, if you want to pay your mortgage, put food on the table, you have to get vaccinated. They were even driving vaccine for very young children. At the same time that was going on, they ended this for unaccompanied minors. And where's the science? Look, we know the majority of unaccompanied so-called minors are actually 16, 17 years old. The science have been very clear that they can carry the coronavirus just as much as an adult can. And that's why the majority of Americans feel that this was an ideologic, politically driven carve-out. And that this is exactly why the public's trust in the CDC has been lost. It's hypocrisy, and it makes no sense. At the end of the day, I actually believe American lives have been lost so they can achieve their ideologically or political agenda here.
And to your point, we don't even know if they're 16 or 17 years old, right? Because we don't even have identification. So
many of them are older. That's right.
As you've said, it's mostly teen boys when we talk about unaccompanied children. That is statistically true. That's what you said before. So more than 2.8 million people have left Ukraine as Russia continues to invade the country. Mark, as Ukrainians continue to try and get out as fast as they can, you argue the answer should not always be automatically to bring refugees here to the United States. Tell us why you think it's so important for Ukrainians to stay in neighboring countries.
Yeah, Jen, this is very important. Look, I'm not saying that we should never accept refugees. What I'm saying is it should be case specific. And in this case, I think the overwhelming majority of our focus, of our strategy, should be able to help the European theater, help the countries that are adjacent, that are close to Ukraine. Let's get them the resources, whether that's through donations through Red Cross, UNICEF, Samaritan's Purse, or as Congress has done, give them some funding. And to get these refugees off the border, out of the shelters, but yet they can share this within the European theater. It's not just Poland, but Romania, Germany, Italy, Spain, even the UK. I think the best thing that we can do for the Ukrainian citizens, and we should, is get them relief as fast as possible. And that's to get them to other countries in the European theater. And the last thing I'll say is, look, and we've seen the Ukrainian citizens, their resolve, their tenacity, their love for the country. One of the issues of refugees, it's not permanent, it's temporary. So when it's safe to go back to Ukraine, they should be in a position where they can get back to Ukraine as fast as possible to help rebuild their country.
Mark Morgan, always great seeing you. Thanks for joining us.
This is brand new video from South Texas. Texas Department of Public Safety sent this to us just in the past few hours. Police chasing a smuggler who attempted to bring 6 migrants into the country in Eagle Pass, Texas, right along the border. The SUV sped through the town, dodging cars, and then finally plowed into the Rio Grande when they took a wrong turn. The migrants took off into the water. Officers say 6 illegal immigrants were then finally referred to the Border Patrol. And stories like this are happening every day, every hour along our southern border, while the focus has been on Ukraine and, of course, rising prices on just about everything. The White House used this Friday for a document dump. Washington speak for putting out news that you don't want anybody to see. So you do it on a Friday afternoon, especially during all these other crises. There's been a plunge in the number of deportations under the Biden administration, despite record high migrant crossings. Last year, there were just over 59,000 migrants deported, an all-time low, all-time. That compares to just under 186,000 in 2020, some 267,000 in 2019. The lower numbers being blamed partly on COVID restrictions, but also agents have removed migrants under the Title 42 Public Health Code, which evidently isn't considered formal deportation. So take the numbers with a grain of salt. But compare the 59,000 deportations to the numbers of migrants encountered. As you can see, 2021, record number of migrants encountered, 1.7 million, and an all-time or near all-time low of deportations, just 59,000. ICE says just about half of the migrants nabbed had criminal convictions, and the administration says it's now prioritizing the deportations of quality over quantity, in their words. Let's bring in Lieutenant Chris Oliveris, Department of Public Safety from the great state of Texas. Good to see you, sir. Thank you. You're an expert in this. What in these numbers is most important?
Well, I mean, great to be with you, Lynn. It's been a while. So I can tell you right now that just those numbers alone tells you right there that there has not been any type of enforcement action taken from the federal government. You see the numbers there, they're at an all-time historic high as far as apprehensions. But then when you look at the deportations and the actual arrests, it's an all-time low. So that just goes to show you that there's no enforcement action being done on part of the federal government. But of course, the men and women of Border Patrol, ICE agents are out there wanting to do the job to apprehend these individuals and follow the rule of law. But again, the numbers show it. The numbers speak for themselves. And I can tell you right now, of course, the focus, as you mentioned, is on the current war right now in Ukraine. Of course, it's devastating. It's tragic what's going on in Ukraine, but also we can't lose sight of what's taking place along our southern border. And I can tell you right now, just speaking with some of the agents in the field, some of our sources, right now we are on track to surpass 2021 as far as apprehensions and also gotaways. Over 200,000 gotaways right now that are being currently reported. And that's only what's being reported. You got to keep in mind, too, those that get away, they don't set up any sensors or any cameras. So it's very concerning to us, and it should be concerning to the American people as well.
Yeah, we put up the numbers one more time, and you think about the number of people coming across. You say now it's even more people coming across, and there is the same number of agents. I know Operation Lone Star, you've got a lot of folks from the Texas Department of Public Safety, the troopers, the Rangers down there, and then addition to the National Guard. But still, I feel I'm thinking that the higher the number of encounters go, the more the number of gotaways get, because you just have agents tied up processing people and not being able to chase down conceivably the people who are the most dangerous.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So that's what the whole purpose of Operation Lone Star, at least on the state side, was to focus on the criminal element, those single adults that are coming across. And that's what we've been focusing on. And just recently, the governor just launched an initiative on the criminal task pass that we've been doing, and several other counties as well. So we are continuing to enhance operations based on the threats that we see along the southern border. But again, I can just tell you right now, Leland, that the numbers have not decreased at all by any means. They continue to increase. And also, we have information from some of our sources as well, is that some of these illegal immigrants that are coming across from specific countries, and I can't get into detail, obviously, because this is involving Border Patrol and ICE, but there's mass releases right now that are being conducted because of the fact that there's just so much overcrowding in these facilities. And these are single adults as well as families that are being released from certain countries. So again, it's going to be a continuing problem.
Yeah, we've seen all that video, right, of the single adult males being released at the bus stations and onto planes, oftentimes through non-governmental organizations, charities, essentially. The federal government is paying for their plane tickets. Here's some of the video from the airport in San Antonio of folks heading out to planes. We saw it when I was down with you guys in McAllen. How certain are we, when all these folks are released, that they've been screened to not be terrorists, to not be former criminals in the country that they came from?
Well, that's a good question. The answer is that we're not. We don't know the backgrounds of these individuals. And I mean, we're more focused on the single adults that are coming across. We over 150 different countries where we're seeing, illegal immigrants that are coming across from. And I can tell you now, especially in the Del Rio sector, they've seen a significant increase in single adults that are coming across. Yeah. Some that do have some ties to some type of transnational criminal organizations and even terrorist groups. So it's a national security threat to everyone, especially our country right now that's taking place. So it's very concerning.
Well, I know the focus has not been on the border for the past couple of weeks, but I know at the same time you guys have been on guard just the same. We appreciate you taking some time to talk, Lieutenant. It's good to see you.
Appreciate it. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Fleeing the invasion are actually coming now here to our southern border seeking asylum.
Yeah, but a policy under the Trump administration is sending some families back while others are being let in. CBS 8's Regina Urita talked to immigration lawyers and journalists in both the U.S. and Mexico and has more on that story.
For more than a year, the Biden administration has been expelling migrants at the southern border under Title 42, despite calls from immigration lawyers and advocates trying to end it. Now those calls are growing louder as Ukrainians begin to arrive.
Title 42 was put in place for COVID restrictions. The Biden administration has kept the Trump-era policy in place and defended it in court as a necessity to prevent the spread. But as COVID restrictions begin to ease, immigration lawyers in San Diego argue the policy is no longer needed and only contributes to the inhumane treatment happening at the border.
This is actually an inhumane policy, and people are calling to cancel it because it's not safe for these immigrants who are fleeing their countries to be stuck over in Mexico, and who knows what is happening over there.
Now with Russian and Ukrainian families fleeing the invasion and coming to the border, the situation has worsened. Jacob Sapichnik, who has a law firm in San Diego and has been helping Ukrainian families, says U.S. Border Patrol agents are taking advantage of the policy and turning families away.
Even though they touched U.S. soil, they wouldn't let them claim asylum. They just send them back, claiming that, you have to wait in Mexico. So it's definitely being abused by CBP officers and other government officials, and I think it's time to get rid of it.
And Tijuana journalists who we spoke with say they've witnessed dozens of Ukrainian and Russian families gathering outside the border. Adding that families are saying CBP agents are being selective of who they let in, and sometimes not letting Russian or Central Americans in at all.
That they allow some families with a very relatively short amount of time, which is very unusual. Even people with humanitarian parole will take a long time to get that waiver, so to speak. Some are allowed to get in, but not others.
As for workers crossing the border every day, They say Tijuana is saturated with families coming from every part of the world, and it's making it hard for them to cross the border and get to work. CBS 8 also reached out to Customs and Border Patrol asking why some cases have been expedited and allowed in, but have yet to respond. For CBS 8, I'm Regina Urrieta.
Thanks for joining us here on News Nation Rush Hour. I'm Nicole Burley, and the number of refugees fleeing the war in Ukraine continues to grow, now topping 3 million people. You can see from this map where they're going. Nearly 2/3 of those Ukrainians finding refuge in Poland. Now, in many cases, they're finding support across the border from others from their home country already living in Poland. And those who have escaped Russia's attacks have fled to neighboring countries, as we said, like Poland and Moldova. But as the crisis in Ukraine grows more severe by the day and weeks, the U.S. could soon see an influx of Ukrainians and even Russians trying to seek refuge. Correspondent Nancy Liu is live for us in L.A. Nancy, an immigration lawyer you spoke with, says right now she's being inundated with requests for help.
You're right, Nicole, and she is not alone. Even before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. was already seeing more requests from both countries, people trying to get into the U.S., especially Russians. The crisis has put a new spotlight on the thousands seeking entry into Southern California from Mexico. This is becoming a more common scene at the U.S. port of entry in San Isidro. A Ukrainian named Sofia and her 3 children recently entered from Tijuana. They had fled Ukraine 3 days after the invasion.
I probably don't have any other place to go because actually I have family and friends in USA and they're ready to support me.
But this Ukrainian couple was turned away due to improper paperwork. While there is ease in entering Mexico, Ukraine and Russia are not on the list of countries with a U.S. visa waiver, so a swell of European asylum seekers is growing south of the border, and for quite some time it's been far more Russians than Ukrainians.
I really want to try to help everyone, and I know it's not possible, and it's an emotional roller coaster. It's a tough, yeah.
Immigration attorney Anaida Zadikian has gone from a couple Russian inquiries a month to several new clients every week. The southern border has seen more than 5,600 Russians seeking asylum in just the past 4 months.
It has been going on for a while, but it started increasing last year. I believe because the situation in Russia has been deteriorating.
And with things getting worse with the impact of Western sanctions, more Russians want out. But rubles are practically worthless and flights out are extremely limited.
Sanctions and everything, they hit the hardest to the people who are actually free thinkers, you know, who are not supporting whatever the government is doing. And it's really sad because they are actually trapped right now.
Russians and Ukrainians are a tiny fraction of all asylum seekers at the border. But according to the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse at Syracuse, they are winning their cases at a higher rate than other migrants.
It will be very interesting how the administration will handle this, given that they have now flown many Haitian refugees back to Haiti on deportation flights over the last several months.
Now, north of the border, many migrants are assisted by the San Diego Response Network, which reports the biggest groups they are currently serving: Russians, Ukrainians, and Cubans. Nicole?
All right, Nancy Liu, thank you for that.
Joining us to discuss the ongoing border crisis, Tom Homan, Fox News contributor and retired acting ICE director. Tom, good morning. It's good to see you. 70,000 people all at once is a lot, even for how big this border crisis has gotten or how bad it's gotten. Why now? Why are all these people, could they be coming to the border all at once right now?
Well, this is a typical time of year where you see mass migration because of growing season in the U.S. So a lot of them get jobs on big produce farms. But look, this 70,000, you know, they'll split up and go to different parts of the border, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. So far, we're on track this year to break last year's numbers, and last year's numbers were an historic high. The highest illegal immigration numbers we've ever seen in the history of the station, and we're on par to beat that this year because the Biden administration has proven there's no consequence or no deterrence. They released over 600,000 people into the United States last year. Many of them with notice to appears, which says, show up at an ICE office when you get a chance, if you want to. And over half of them didn't. So they know there's no consequence, no deterrence. They'll be released in the United States. They can get a job illegally because Secretary Mayorkas has ordered ICE not to do worksite enforcement operations. And also he's declared being in the country illegally by itself is not enough for ICE to make an arrest. So if you know you come here illegally and ICE isn't looking for you, you can get order removed, but ICE isn't looking for you. You can get a job illegally, and ICE is not going to go to the worksite to find you. Why wouldn't you come?
Yeah, and then you have to wonder, can Border Patrol handle processing 70,000 people all at once?
Well, that's a problem that's happened last year. Border Patrol's going to get overwhelmed. They're going to pull the agents off the line into processing centers, which leaves the border unguarded. It's not a coincidence last year with historic illegal immigration that we saw historic overdose deaths of fentanyl. DEA says 95% of that fentanyl comes across the southwest border. What insults me as somebody that worked for the Trump administration is that we had the most secure border in this nation's history. Illegal immigration was down to a 40-year low. And Joe Biden came into office and purposely opened the border up and unsecured it. And that's why we have the a fentanyl epidemic. That's why we have COVID coming across the border. You got criminals coming across the border. It's just what the Biden administration has done is just ridiculous.
Yeah, and Tom, you look at the poll numbers, and the Biden administration, President Biden polls really low when it comes to the border issue because people realize that having an open southern border makes the country less safe. If he's not polling well on this issue consistently, you just have to wonder why he hasn't reversed course.
Because he sold to the progressive left. I mean, when he was a senator, he voted for border barriers. Look, I'll say it again, regardless of what people think of President Trump, he secured our border at a level that's never been secure before. And Joe Biden came in and unsecured it in a matter of months. Why would any president do that, knowing that if you unsecure the border, it's going to cause a mass migration, it's going to cause a humanitarian crisis where people die, it's going to cause the criminal cartels to smuggle more drugs across a border when Border Patrol's tied up in processing centers? Yeah. Who would do that? But they did it. And that's why we're dealing with this is open borders.
Tom, I know that this is something that's concerning to you. It's definitely something to watch. The fact that the Biden administration there's a lot of pressure on them to repeal Title 42. So if you think the border issue is bad now, just wait until that happens. Got to leave it here. Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
New tonight, the number of people coming to the U.S. southern border to seek asylum is putting a strain on Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. Employees there have been assisting hundreds of migrants over the past several months, migrants who in some cases have been arriving with no place to go.
Team 12's Adriana Loya has the details on what is happening at the airport and what local nonprofits are getting involved.
Since around November of last year,
we're serving 300 people a day, more or less.
The nonprofit Regional Center for Border Health in Yuma has been assisting more than 300 seeking asylum migrants a day.
Yeah, we actually pick up a lot of the families at the detention center.
After testing migrants for COVID-19, feeding and giving clothing to those who need it, they are on a bus heading to Phoenix. Some go to a shelter, others to bus stations, but a majority are taken to Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. But not all have paid tickets to travel.
For those that don't have plans to travel or that can get a hold of the sponsor, we encourage them to let us know.
Amanda Aguirre is president of the nonprofit. She says some migrants are seeking to go to the airport despite not having solidified travel plans.
In those cases, I'm not the law enforcement. I cannot legally detain anybody or tell them, no, you cannot do this.
But airport leaders say that is leading to hundreds of migrants arriving at the airport unprepared to travel. And it's forcing airport staff to provide assistance outside of their normal duties.
The current flow is unsustainable.
It's a concern for Senator Kirsten Sinema.
Airport staffers are not trained or skilled in the area of providing short-term humanitarian or physical support to migrants.
Migrants who can't book a flight for that day are picked up by the International Rescue Committee.
We have been seeing anywhere from a dozen to 60, 70, 80 individuals be referred to us from the airport.
But the Phoenix nonprofit says it can't always meet the demand. Immigration and Customs Enforcement also tells 12 News they do drop-offs of migrants at the airport.
Pretty stunning images from America's southern border. And the high-ranking drug cartel leader's arrest igniting gunfights on the Mexican side of the border. The violence escalating to the point of temporarily shutting down 2 international bridges. Authorities also confirm a grenade explosion at the U.S. consulate in Nuevo Laredo, right across the U.S. border, with federal employees there instructed to shelter in place. Correspondent Marky Martin is live for us tonight in Dallas. So, Marky, tell us, why would getting a cartel leader off the streets actually turn into more violence?
Yeah, Nicole, you're about to see a lot of video, but I will tell you right off the top, what is happening in Nuevo Laredo is exactly the kind of violence that Governor Abbott has been pointing to for the last year when he's touting his Operation Lone Star, and his changing of leadership at the very top of the National Guard might actually be his first acknowledgement that things aren't operating smoothly.
The sounds of gunfire piercing the night in Nuevo Laredo. Gang members paralyzing traffic with spike strips. Charred tractor trailers lining the highway.
You saw some of the destruction of 18-wheelers, vehicles along the pathway.
Congressman Henry Cuellar from Laredo, Texas, says the violence was sparked over a high-profile cartel arrest.
One group is not happy because they caught their leader. The other 2 are saying, is there a vacuum in here? Maybe we need to come in. So there might be fights over Plaza because of what happened, capturing that high-ranking individual.
The man arrested, one of Border Patrol's most wanted criminals, Juan Gerardo Trevino, also known as El Huevo. He's the leader of the Cartel of the Northeast, with a long rap sheet. His arrest, a powerful blow to that gang's power in the area. Now, 2 other cartels are vying for their business. 3 gangs taking to the streets, firing at Mexican troops and each other, shutting down the U.S. consulate and 2 international bridges in the process. All of this on the same day Governor Greg Abbott appointed a new leader to run the Texas National Guard. General Thomas Seltzer is replacing General Tracy Norris, who had been in charge of the Texas Military Department for 3 years and the embattled Operation Lone Star since its inception.
What we do know is that the results that we've seen on the border have been difficult living conditions for soldiers, endemic pay problem, lack of key equipment.
Davis Winkie is a reporter with the Army Times who first broke operational problems with Operation Lone Star. A press release from Governor Abbott about the change hinted it was because General Norris' term was up. Winkie believes there's probably more to the story.
Yes, Norris's 2-year appointment had expired, but her predecessor did 7 years. It's pretty common for adjutants general around the country to be in service of their state for years, if not decades. So this is likely an early exit.
And Nicole, Operation Lone Star, clearly a major hot button issue, not only here in Texas, but nationwide. And now Governor Abbott will be up for re-election. He's facing off against Beto O'Rourke come November. And O'Rourke himself issued a statement yesterday saying in part this: you can switch generals, but we all know where the buck stops. Greg Abbott took 10,000 Guard members from their families, jobs, and communities, eventually adding that it's time to send them all home. Nicole.
All right, Marky Martin live in Dallas. Thank you for that.
Of Cuban migrants are in custody after making landfall near the Florida Keys. 17 migrants were taken into Border Patrol custody this morning. U.S. Border Patrol tweeting this image. During this fiscal year, agents have responded to more than 60 maritime smuggling events that have made landfall here in Florida.
Heats up in Arizona. We are seeing a lot of questions from viewers about some of the campaign promises from State 48's gubernatorial candidates.
Yeah, and many of those center around the border and whether a governor can approve funding a wall without the help from the federal government. Team 12's Michael Doudna verifies.
A 2016 rallying cry is now a campaign promise for Republican gubernatorial candidates like Kari Lake and Karen Taylor Robson. But can a governor complete a wall on our border without needing the federal government's approval? Our sources are the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol and Aaron Reichlin Melnick with the American Immigration Council.
Where are they going to build it, and how could they build it?
First off, it's important to know that most of Arizona's border already has some sort of barrier on it. The challenge is building legally on what is left.
So the remaining sections of wall that could be built are almost universally on federal or tribal lands.
And that's key. While the state could buy private lands and construct a wall, like what Texas is doing, it isn't that simple here. For example, a Native American tribe has around 60 miles of that border and oppose a wall. The federal government controls almost everything else, and the state cannot force either to hand over the land.
One of those things that's most obvious is that the state government cannot use the power of eminent domain to seize federal land and use it as it likes. It has to get the permission of the federal government to do that.
Well, crossing activity at our border really heated up this weekend. I'm Jenny Day. Glad to have you with us on this Monday.
Now, Madonna Albright, with Border Patrol and the Sheriff's Office overwhelmed, other local safety resources are also being strained by the migrant crossings.
Yeah, our Adam Klepp tells us more about how this could impact local taxpayers.
$47,000. That's how much money the Somerton Cocopah Fire Department says they've spent on emergency calls coming from migrants here at the wall just north of County 14th Street. It's an amount of money they say they don't expect to be reimbursed for from the federal government. Another surge in undocumented immigrants hitting the Yuma sector this weekend. With thousands being apprehended by Border Patrol and seeking asylum. See. Paul DeAnda, the Somerton Cocopah fire chief, says the department is once again getting calls from migrants at the wall.
We had 9 responses to that area over the course of the weekend.
And the responses don't come cheap. DeAnda says currently the department has $47,000 in lost revenue due to the trips to the wall in just the past few months and migrant transports to Yuma Regional Medical Center. DeAnda says the federal government won't reimburse the fire department for that money because the transports are happening before the migrants are in their custody. Ultimately, this leaves taxpayers with the bill.
Saying in effect now, footing the bill for something that the federal government has the money to pay for but refuses to.
However, the fire department remains committed to helping the people who cross. Crystal Ontiveros is a paramedic firefighter and says it's heartbreaking whenever she's called out to the wall.
You can tell that they're starving or dehydrated.
Despite the dangers of the journey, getting on the bus and hoping their asylum claims are accepted is what many migrants believe is their best chance to change their lives.
It guarantees us that we can be free and have a normal life without being in danger of our lives.
Adam Klett, News 11.